My name is Cara Delaney. I'm 36. And last week, my mother invited me to my sister's engagement dinner like I was an afterthought. No greeting, no warmth. Just a group text saying, Thursday, 7 p.m., Briar and Pine. That would have been fine if Briar and Pine wasn't my restaurant. Not that they know. They just think it's some trendy spot Ashley deserves. Funny how people can walk right into something you built and still act like you don't belong in the room. Have you ever been treated like the help by your own family? Drop a comment if you've ever been the one they left off the guest list but still expected to show up. What happened at that dinner didn't start that night. Let me rewind to the moment I saw that text and the part of me that whispered, "Show up anyway." The text sat on my screen for a good 20 seconds before I could process it. No. Hey Cara, no. How are you? Just 6 words. Engagement dinner for Ashley. Thursday, Briar and Pine. That was it. No RSVP. No warmth. No mention that Briar and Pine wouldn't exist if not for me. I stared at it longer than I care to admit. I wasn't even angry, just hollow. Like I'd walked into a room expecting a hug and found a wall instead. I set my phone down on the kitchen counter, next to a half-unloaded crate of biodegradable lids. The irony stung. While my mother was planning seating charts for Ashley's big night, I was sourcing compostables and finalizing a sanitation compliance contract with the city. For a restaurant they didn't even know was mine. They think I still run trash pickup. How? They don't know I helped fund the whole build-out, that I oversee back-of-house logistics for 3 venues now, or that my name is on every vendor agreement they're sipping their overpriced wine under. And yet, I wasn't surprised. This is what it's always been. Ashley gets spotlight. I get shrugged at. I almost didn't go. I really didn't want to. But somewhere between the silence and the sting, I heard that old voice in my head. The one I've tried to quiet. The one that still wants to be seen even just once by the people who taught me how to disappear. Show up anyway. I reached for my phone again to reply. Just 3 words. I'll be there. A few minutes later, it buzzed again, but this time, not from family. Hey Miss K. Guess who got bumped to hostess Thursday? 2at.com. I'm nervous, but I'll make you proud. Jazz. I smiled. This beat myself. Jazz had started as a dishwasher at another spot 2 years ago. Single mom, never asked for a handout. I brought her in when we opened Briar and Pine, trained her personally, promoted her twice. She didn't know I'd be at the dinner. I didn't tell her. Not yet. The next morning, I dug out a slate gray dress I hadn't worn in months. Clean lines. Nothing fancy. I hung it on the back of my bedroom door and stared at it. It wasn't the kind of dress Ashley would post on Instagram. It wasn't flowy or expensive or dipped in a brand name. But it made me feel grounded. And tonight, I'd need that. By Thursday evening, the nerves had turned into something steadier. Not confidence, exactly. Just a decision. The rideshare dropped me 2 blocks away. I didn't want to pull up like I was making an entrance. As I walked the sidewalk, I glanced up at the Briar and Pine sign, still freshly hung above the brick archway. The font had been my choice. The name, Ashley's. She'd once said it sounded upscale, like a wedding blog. She didn't know it was my money that made the place real. I stepped through the glass doors and into a space that smelled faintly of rosemary, citrus, and intention. The hostess stand gleamed. Candles flickered across stone-topped tables. It was all exactly as I designed it. Marcus spotted me from behind the bar and gave the tiniest nod. No smile, just recognition. He knew why I was here. He didn't say a word. Jazz was nowhere in sight. Probably in the back, reviewing notes and tying her apron twice, the way she did when nervous. I scanned the reservation book out of habit. There it was, Delaney party, 7 p.m., main table. 10 seats. One of which by default, not request, was mine. My throat tightened, but I moved forward. They'll sit in what I built, I whispered to myself, and still pretend I'm lucky to be here. I stood a little straighter, smoothed the front of my dress, and walked toward the dining room, not to be noticed, not to be thanked, but simply to exist. To take up space in the thing I made. Let them squirm later. Tonight, I was done apologizing for showing up. The second I stepped past the hostess stand, I could feel the air change. Not just because the temperature dipped, though the main dining room always ran a little cooler, but because every inch of the space was curated for someone else's spotlight. Jazz was nowhere in sight, probably greeting a table or fixing a place setting. But Marcus caught my eye from across the floor. His expression didn't shift, but he gave me the smallest nod. Just enough. He knew exactly who I was tonight. I walked past couples leaning into candlelight, forks clicking against ceramic plates I'd hand-selected from a maker in Ohio. The chandeliers overhead glinted with warm amber light. I remembered how many rounds of samples we'd tested before choosing this one. But none of that mattered to the people I was about to sit with. The Delaney party was already gathered near the back center table, of course. Beneath the arched wall paneling I'd argued to keep, even when everyone said it looked too rustic for upscale. Ashley sat at the head, naturally. Her blonde curls styled into something that probably had a name, her ivory blazer sharp and casual all at once. She saw me first. Her eyes flicked up, gave me the once-over, and landed back on her wine glass. Doreen looked up next. Pale blue blouse. Pearl studs. An expression like she was tolerating the moment. "Kara," she said, not warm. Not cold, just clinical. "You're early." "Actually," I said gently, glancing at the wall clock behind her. "I'm on time." She didn't respond. Just lifted her water glass like a judge raising a gavel. I pulled out the chair at the far end of the table. It scraped a little louder than I meant. Ashley flinched. Next to her, her fiancé Preston or Parker or something beginning with flashed, a firm smile. One of those practiced ones. "Nice to meet you," he said, extending a hand like I was applying for something. "We've met," I replied softly. He blinked. Tried to place me, failed. Of course he had. Champagne arrived. Poured efficiently by a young server whose hands trembled slightly as he reached across the table. Doreen didn't offer a toast, Ashley did. "To love," she said. "And curated evenings." Everyone chuckled politely. I sipped and stayed silent. The conversation spun quickly into guest lists and venue deposits, and whether blush was a better tone than dusty rose. Ashley listed caterers, florists, photographer sol vendors who, I noticed, had once cold emailed my company looking for zero-waste consultations. I sat in the chair I'd once had shipped in from a local craftsman, and said nothing. "You look comfortable," Ashley said suddenly, tilting her head toward me. I met her gaze. "I am." Her eyes dropped to my dress. I could see it, the gears turning. Practical. Safe. Not expensive enough. "Oh good," she said. "That color suits you." "Very. Neutral." I smiled politely and nodded. That was Ashley's gift. Weaponized sweetness. The first course arrived charred leek tartlets with microgreens. Something Kara's team had tested for weeks to perfect the plate temperature. No one noticed. "Did you see the reeds are flying in?" Doreen asked. "They'll be at the bridal brunch." I hadn't been invited to the bridal brunch. Of course I hadn't. "She's been asked to speak at the County Women's Circle," Doreen added, nodding at Ashley. "How lovely," I said, quietly. Ashley beamed. Prestono, I remembered, adjusted his cufflinks. A silence fell for a beat too long, so I reached for the water pitcher. As I poured, the young server returned, still rattled. He leaned toward me and whispered, "Would you mind helping clean up the spill by table 6? I paused, then smiled. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else." His face flushed. "Oh, I'm so sorry." Marcus appeared like a ghost, calm and direct. "She's with the Delaney party," he said smoothly. The server muttered an apology and scurried off. I let it go. Tonight wasn't about correcting every assumption. It was about holding the mirror up and letting them squirm in their own reflection. I caught Doreen's eyes flick toward me, then quickly away. Ashley took another sip of wine. Preston didn't look at me again. But Marcus? He stood at the edge of the room, still as ever, watching. And when our eyes met again, I saw something in his that steadied me. Respect. Not the loud kind. The kind that comes from knowing who built the place he worked in piece by piece and never once asked for credit. I folded my napkin over my lap, lifted my fork, and took the first bite of the tartlet I'd helped refine 3 months ago. They didn't know. But they would. Eventually. The second course had just landed when the conversation shifted subtly, then sharply. Ashley was holding court now, voice light and effortless as she launched into a story about a winery tour in Sonoma. Something about hand-harvested grapes and artisanal packaging. Everyone nodded like they knew what that meant. I was mid-sip when I heard it. "So Kara," my mother said, turning to me with that tight, Civic Club smile, "you're still doing that thing with, what is it, sanitation?" She said the word like it had teeth. I set my glass down. Slowly. "I am," I replied. "Though these days, there's a 6-month waitlist for our commercial systems." Ashley snorted just loud enough. "Well, someone has to deal with the garbage," she said, flicking her napkin onto her lap. "At least you're doing your part for the environment." Unquote. I gave her a polite nod. But something in me flickered. It wasn't the words. It was the ease. How natural it felt for them to shrink me. No one pushed back. Not even Preston, who was now scrolling something on his phone under the table like he'd already tuned out. Doreen laughed gently, adjusting her water glass. "Well, not everyone can work in tech or fashion," she said, eyes twinkling toward Ashley. "Some people are more hands-on." I stared at the salad I hadn't touched. Bitter greens. Shaved parmesan. Walnut vinaigrette. I remembered the kitchen trials for this dish. The adjustments we made to the walnut oil so it wouldn't cloud the plating. I remembered. But they never knew. Not really. "I like hands-on," I said. "Keeps me grounded." Ashley raised an eyebrow like she didn't hear, either didn't care. Then Preston lifted his glass and stood. "To Ashley," he said, "and to this next chapter of purpose, of progress, of elegance." Ashley beamed. Glasses clinked. Napkins fluttered. My mother dabbed her eyes with a cloth that matched the linens. I didn't raise my glass. Not at first. But then I did. Slowly. Letting the stem catch the light. I sipped without a word. No one toasted me. No one ever had. A memory crawled in me, at 19, standing on a loading dock behind a diner in February, elbows deep in a broken compactor. My gloves soaked, my chest tight from cold and pride. It was my first week running pickup solo. I was exhausted. But proud. I still am. Only now the trucks I designed are operating in 3 counties. But here, I was still just the trash girl. A young cousin Melissa or Mallory, I couldn't remember, leaned over from the edge of the table. "So, what do you do, exactly?" I opened my mouth. Ashley cut in. "She runs like an eco thing. Trash startups or compost. I don't know. Something commercial. It's cute." She sipped her wine and smiled. Like she'd just helped. My throat tightened. "It's called Clean Track," I said. "We build scalable waste reduction systems for businesses and schools." Ashley blinked. "Right, that." Preston leaned back and added, with a smirk, "Well, at least someone's taking care of the leftovers." Chuckles rolled down the table. I didn't flinch. But something inside me coiled. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was recognition. Of how far I'd come. And how far they hadn't moved an inch. Marcus passed behind the table just then, refilling glasses. He paused at mine, leaned slightly, and murmured, "Your kitchen's on point tonight." I met his eyes. "Thanks," I said quietly. "I trained them well." He nodded once. Then kept moving. Nobody else heard him. But I did. And that was enough for now. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the cloth napkin I'd brought from home. One I'd designed myself, printed with the Clean Track logo and our company motto. "It's not waste. It's the future. I laid it gently in my lap. No one noticed. But it reminded me this table wasn't the only one I'd ever sat at. And it sure wouldn't be the last. Ashley was now talking about her registry. Doreen chimed in about a custom stand mixer and some French ceramic pans. My stomach turned. I pushed the salad aside and smiled. Not because I was amused, but because I could already feel the shift coming. It hadn't landed yet, but it was close. I don't remember what Ashley was saying when it happened. Something about monogrammed linen napkins for the rehearsal dinner. Or was it hand-poured soy candles? It all started to blur. What I do remember is the moment Doreen leaned over and said it. "I used that tote you gave me," she said lightly, like she was offering a compliment. I looked up from my untouched plate. "It held up great," she added. "Perfect for keeping cleaning supplies in the trunk, scrub brushes, gloves, spray bottles. Very sturdy." My mouth stayed closed, but my fingers curled slightly against the linen napkin in my lap. The one printed with CleanTrack's motto. "It's not waste, it's the future." That tote had been a Mother's Day gift. Thoughtful, custom. A quiet way of saying, "I'm proud of the work I do, even if you're not." And just like that, she'd reduced it to a cleaning caddy. Ashley caught my eye and smirked. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Her silence was seasoned. My chest tightened. I swallowed once. Let the sting move through me. I glanced to my right. Jazz was walking by with a tray of glasses, her shoulders straight, expression focused. Her name tag glinted slightly under the soft lights. She didn't see me. But I saw her. And suddenly, I knew what I needed to do. I reached into my clutch, felt for the envelope I'd brought meant for something else entirely. Tucked between folded bills was the one I'd set aside for emergencies. Or, apparently, for this. Uno, zero. In cash. I waited until Jazz returned to the table with a fresh water pitcher. She approached from my left, eyes on the glasses. "Hey," I said softly, barely above the hum of conversation. "Pause for a second?" She looked up. Caught off guard. "Yes, ma'am." I handed her the envelope and leaned just close enough. "For your first apartment," I said. "And whatever you need to make it yours." She blinked, lips parting. "Miss Ka, don't make a scene," I whispered. "Just take it." She nodded once. No tears, no noise. Just a tiny breath. Ashley saw it. She turned her head slightly, brow twitching like she couldn't decide whether to smirk or ask a question. "What was that?" she said casually, eyeing the envelope as Jazz tucked it into her apron. "Just a tip," I said. "She's earned it." Preston raised an eyebrow. "A tip?" I nodded. "I used to bus tables, remember? Thought I'd pay it forward." That. Ashley looked at me, then at Jazz, then back at me. Something shifted in her jaw. And for the first time all night, she didn't have a comeback. The table went quiet for a beat too long. Doreen adjusted her bracelet. Preston took a drink. My uncle reached for the butter like nothing had happened. But it had. I didn't say another word. Didn't brag. Didn't explain. I just returned to my plate, picked up my fork, and pushed the roasted carrots into a soft line across the porcelain. They were perfectly caramelized. Of course they were. It was my kitchen. Internal heat pulsed behind my ribs. Not anger, not sadness. Just power, quiet, earned, unshakable. Jazz passed by again a few minutes later, this time her pace slower. Her eyes met mine as she cleared a neighboring table. She didn't say a word. She just nodded. Once. And in that tiny movement, everything in me studied. Because it wasn't just money. It was proof. That someone saw me. That someone knew. They could call it cute all they wanted. But they'd never again mistake me for a shadow. Ashley picked up her phone, probably to post something filtered and clever. Doreen leaned in to talk about bridal shower centerpieces. No one mentioned the envelope. But the energy at the table had changed. Slightly, subtly. The way a room shifts after a clap of thunder, even when the storm hasn't hit yet. I smoothed the edges of my napkin again. My logo caught the light. And I thought, let them wonder. The silence didn't last long. It never does in rooms where people need noise to pretend everything's fine. Ashley quickly pivoted into honeymoon ideas, Greece, maybe, or Napa again. Doreen chimed in with a half-story about a friend who'd booked a villa through a concierge service for people who actually travel tastefully. I stirred the ice in my water glass, letting the clink echo a little too long. Then I felt Ida's presence behind me. "Excuse me," a woman's voice said gently, with the kind of confidence that comes from never rushing. "I'm so sorry to interrupt. Are you Cara Delaney?" The table went still. I looked up. She was maybe early 50s, black, with smart glasses and a blazer that said she wasn't here for ambiance. Her hair was pinned back in that clean, executive kind of way. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. "Yes," I said. Calm. Measured. Her face lit up. "I thought so," she said. "I saw you speak at the State Sustainability Summit in Bloomington last year. That talk on zero-waste logistics? Incredible." My stomach flipped. Ashley blinked like the air had shifted. "Sorry to intrude," the woman added with a warm glance around the table. "I just had to say hello. You changed how I approach vendor contracts." She extended a hand. I shook it. "Thank you," I said, steady as stone. "That means a lot." She smiled. "This place is stunning, by the way. Whoever did the logistics and design you can tell they cared." I nodded once. "I'll pass that along." She winked like she already knew. And just like that, she was gone, slipping past the floral divider toward a private table, her wine glass already waiting. I turned back to find the table frozen in that awkward half-smile way people do when they're trying not to ask something that suddenly matters. Ashley cleared her throat. Doreen reached for the bread basket. No one said a word. That woman didn't just compliment me. She broke the fourth wall of my family's delusion. And for a moment, I wanted to explain. To say, that was Linda Brewster, State Procurement Director. She greenlit our first statewide pilot. She knows exactly who I am. But I didn't. Because it wasn't about them knowing. It was about them noticing and still choosing not to ask. And they did. Choose. Preston finally looked up. You spoke at a summit?" I sipped my water. "Yep. Ashley's jaw flexed. "Just once." Then Marcus appeared. Right on cue. "Dessert menu?" he asked the table, cool as ever. Ashley waved it off. "We're doing the pre-selected course, remember?" "Of course," Marcus replied. Then turned directly to me. "Would you prefer your usual finish, Miss Delaney? The kitchen has the orange lavender on standby." It took everything in me not to smile. Ashley tilted her head. "Your usual?" I met Marcus's eyes. "That'd be great, thank you." Boo. He dipped his head and walked off. A quiet exhale passed down the table, like a thread snapping. They still didn't know. But they were starting to feel it. My presence. My history with this place. The fact that the people they considered staff treated me with more precision than they ever had. A glass clinked from across the room. The lights above the bar dimmed slightly, something we'd programmed to signal kitchen shift change. I noticed. No one else did. And then I saw her, jazz smiling faintly as she passed Linda's table, accepting a compliment and a napkin scribbled with what looked like a number. She glanced over at me. Just once. That glance said everything. "You're seen. You matter here. You made this." A tiny warmth settled behind my ribs. I folded my hands in my lap and let the next course arrive: macerated strawberries, lemon glaze, and a shortbread I'd helped develop during our soft launch. No one asked why it came plated differently for me. No one needed to. Because the shift was happening. Not in some big dramatic outburst, but in the quiet power of being known without needing to announce it. They knew her name before you did, I thought. And I let that truth settle around me like a second skin. Ashley leaned forward in her seat, chin resting lightly on her knuckles, eyes shining with just enough malice to make it look like curiosity. "So, she said, swirling the last of her wine. Tell me again what it is you actually do. I paused mid-sip. The question wasn't new. But something in her tone, something sugar-dipped and sharpened, made it land differently. I set my glass down. You mean for work? I asked, like I needed clarification. Ashley smiled. I mean, what's your business, exactly? Besides, giving out tote bags and tipping servers like a TikTok stunt. Preston chuckled. A weak, slanted sound. I breathed in slowly through my nose. CleanTrack is a scalable waste reduction system, I said calmly. We design infrastructure to divert commercial waste from landfills. Right now we work with 23 school districts, 6 hospitals, and a dozen municipalities across the state. Ashley blinked. Oh, oboe. Her voice shrunk a little. She masked it quickly with another sip. We've helped save over 11,000 tons of material from landfills in just under 3 years, I added. It's not glamorous, but it's effective. Doreen gave a tight nod, like I'd just explained how to knit. Well, she said, it's good you found something you're passionate about. It wasn't praise. It was dismissal in a cardigan. I smiled softly. You called it cute once, I said. Remember? At Thanksgiving. When I mentioned composting units and you said, that's adorable. Ashley laughed. I mean, it was cute. You in your little work boots and that truck. My jaw flexed. I still wear the boots, I said. But now I have a fleet. That quieted her. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mallory, the cousin, who barely spoke unless asked, turned to me. You work with schools? She asked, cautiously. I nodded. A lot of them. Especially Title I districts. Her brow furrowed. My son's school started a new composting system last semester. It cut down their trash pickups by half. Is that you? I tilted my head. What's the school? She named it. I smiled. Yeah, I said. That's us. Her eyes widened. Wait, seriously? Seriously, I said. We trained their janitorial staff and installed dual stream containers over fall break. She sat back in her chair. No way, she whispered. He came home so excited about it. Said the cafeteria bins had stickers with animals and stuff. You designed that? Every decal. I nodded. A ripple moved down the table. Doreen looked mildly annoyed. Ashley stared at her napkin. Preston said nothing at all. Mallory leaned closer. Why don't you talk about that more? I gave a half shrug. Didn't think anyone was listening. Another beat passed. Then Doreen cleared her throat and changed the subject. How's everyone doing on drinks? Preston, can you call the server? I looked at her. Really looked. And I saw at the shift. Not panics. Not guilt. But the realization that her script no longer controlled the room. I turned to Marcus instead. Can I get another sparkling water? I asked, louder this time. Of course, Miss Delaney, he said without missing a beat. Ashley's fingers twitched around her fork. But I stayed calm. Because I wasn't here to win. I was here to stop hiding. Marcus returned with my glass. Set it down with care. A sprig of mint tucked against the rim, just how I liked it. And as I lifted it, I remembered something from years ago. I was 23, crouched in a school basement, unclogging a drain by hand. No gloves, no team. Just me, a flashlight, and determination. My mother didn't ask where I'd gone that night. Ashley never mentioned the bruises on my knees. But I remembered. Because that working scene, unpraised, was what built this moment. Not a TED Talk. Not an applause line. Just survival. Layered and earned. Ashley looked at me again. Her mouth opened like she had one more line ready. But nothing came out. I smiled kindly. Not with pity. With distance. Because I didn't need her to see me anymore. Someone else already had. I excused myself from the table and stepped into the hallway near the restrooms just for a breath. The noise behind me softened to a low hum, clinking glasses and curated laughter fading like radio static. The hallway was quiet. Dim. Just enough light to find yourself again. I pulled my phone from my clutch, more out of habit than need. Notifications flashed across the screen: texts, emails, alerts. One caught my eye. TEDx clip. CleanTrack founder goes viral for telling the truth about trash. And Clo. 200,000 views. Climbing fast. I stared at the screen a moment too long. It wasn't the number that stopped me. It was the timing. Because, while I'd been biting my tongue at a table full of people who still thought I drove a garbage truck, the rest of the world had been listening. Actually listening. A quiet breath left my chest. Not a sigh. Just release. I opened the video, let it play on mute. Watched my own face on screen, confident, calm, speaking to a room of strangers who wanted to understand what others here still refused to. There was power in that. Not the flashy kind. The kind that settles in your bones and lets you unclench. A door creaked behind me. I turned. Ashley stood there, wine glass in hand. She didn't speak at first, just leaned against the opposite wall like she owned the corridor too. "Everything okay?" she asked, a little too casually. I nodded. "Just needed some air." She tilted her head, trying to read me. "You've gotten good at talking about your work." I held her gaze. "It's more than just talking." "I know." She sipped. "I mean, clearly you've got fans. That woman earlier practically glowed when she saw you." I didn't answer. She took a longer drink, then smiled tight, unfamiliar. "People always say you should root for your family," she said. "But I think sometimes they don't realize when their family outruns them." He blinked. Was that a compliment? A warning? A confession? She didn't wait for an answer. Just looked me up and down like she was seeing something new and didn't quite know how to carry it. Then she turned and walked back into the dining room. The silence she left behind felt louder than anything she could have said. I stayed a moment longer. Looked down at my phone again. I hadn't posted the TEDx clip myself. My comms manager had uploaded it 3 days ago. I'd barely skimmed it. Now strangers were sharing it across leadership groups, environmental forums, career platforms. It wasn't polished or flashy. It was honest. And people had responded. That used to be what I wanted from my family. Just to be heard. Now, I realized I didn't need that anymore. I didn't need Ashley's nod. I didn't need Doreen's approval. I didn't even need Preston's awkward respect. I just needed air. And maybe one more moment in the space I helped build. I slipped back through the hallway, toward the back of the restaurant where the employee exit stayed cracked for ventilation. The scent of rosemary and char still lingered in the air. CleanTrack's compost bins sat just beyond the gate, sleek, gray, nearly full. Evidence of a dinner well executed. I rested my hand on the steel handle of the back door. No reason. Just a tether. This was mine. Not because my name was on the lease, but because my sweat, my design, my values had shaped every corner of it. Success doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes in silence. Sometimes it comes in someone else's surprised pause. Sometimes it's just the absence of apology. When I returned to the table, no one asked where I'd been. But their eyes tracked me differently. Marcus refilled my glass without prompting. Jazz nodded as she passed. And Ashley? She didn't speak again that night. Because deep down, I think she knew. The old version of Mitha, one who begged to be included, was gone. And in her place stood someone she couldn't categorize. Not because I'd changed, but because I finally stopped waiting for their permission to exist. By the time I returned to the table, dessert was nearly gone. A few plates held the sticky remains of berries and sauce. Someone had scraped a spoon clean and left it like a surrender flag in the middle of the dish. Ashley didn't look up. Neither did Preston. Doreen, though, she watched me. Not sharply, not coldly. Just watched. I slid into my seat and folded my napkin across my lap. No one filled the silence. Even the clink of cutlery had stopped. It took me a few seconds to realize they were waiting for me to speak. But I didn't. I didn't need to anymore. When Marcus returned with coffee, he placed mine down first. Black, no cream. A single sugar packet resting perfectly aligned on the saucer. He didn't say a word. And that silence felt louder than anything he could have announced. Doreen cleared her throat. So, she said, are you still traveling a lot? It wasn't a question, it was a reach. I stirred my coffee once. I won. Ashley shifted in her seat, then ran a finger along the rim of her glass like she was waiting for someone to rescue the moment. I let her sit in it. That's the thing about people who always controlled the room. They panic when their silence doesn't work like it used to. Preston finally spoke. You've been busy, he said. His tone had changed. Less dismissive. More cautious. I nodded. Doreen sipped her coffee but didn't look at me. Her fingers trembled slightly against the porcelain. A part of me, an old part, felt a flicker of guilt. Like, maybe I should ease the tension. Crack a joke. Redirect. But then I remembered how many holidays I'd sat through while they praised Ashley's marketing internships and bridal expos, never once asking where I'd been hauling bins or pitching contracts. They were uncomfortable now. That wasn't mine to fix. Across the room, Jazz met my gaze. Just a second. Then gone again. But it steadied me. Ashley finally looked up. You've really changed, she said. Not as a compliment. More like an accusation. I smiled. Number I've just stopped performing. She blinked. I was always this person, I added. You just never looked close enough. Her jaw tightened. That's not fair. Isn't it? I asked, soft but firm. Doreen shifted in her seat. Let's not do this here. I nodded. Of course. And just like that, the conversation ended. But the silence that followed was different. It wasn't full of superiority. It was full of reckoning. For them, not me. They were realizing the script had changed and they were no longer the ones holding the pen. The sound system shifted to something slower, lower. The kind of instrumental loop we used during closing hours. I recognized it instantly because I'd chosen the playlist myself. Doreen looked down at her napkin. Ashley took a long sip of whatever was left in her glass. Then my father spoke for the first time all night. This place, it's something, he said, eyes still on his plate. I glanced over. His voice was quiet. Real. You know who owns it, he added, glancing toward Marcus. I looked down at my cup. So did Marcus from across the room. And for a second, I thought maybe I should say it. Maybe this is the moment. But I didn't. Instead, I sipped my coffee. Warm. Balanced. And let the silence do what they never let me do before speak. The final round of drinks had just arrived when it happened. A couple from across the room, mid-40s, polished but relaxed, paused near our table on their way out. The man glanced at me, then turned to Marcus. Excuse me, he said with a friendly grin. We've been here twice now, and the service has been flawless. Just had to ask, is the owner here tonight? Marcus didn't hesitate. He angled his body toward me and said with ease, she is. Just over here. The man's eyes flicked to me, curious at first, then recognizing. Oh, he said. That's fantastic. His wife smiled. We were going to write a review, but it feels better saying it in person. Everything from the lighting to the staff to the waste-free presentation was just. She gave a little exhale. Thoughtful. I nodded. Thank you, that means a lot. Ashley froze. Her glass hovered in midair, lips parted like she'd forgotten how to sip. Doreen blinked once, then twice, like she'd been squinting through fog and just caught a road sign she wasn't expecting. Even Preston stiffened, his casual lean pulled suddenly upright. Marcus gave a small nod and excused himself, but not before placing a signature bottle of our private label wine in front of me. The kitchen wanted to offer you this tonight, he said. Compliments of chef and the team. I glanced at the label. A harvest blend I'd helped formulate last fall. Thank them for me, I said. The couple drifted off. The dining room hummed back to life. But at our table, silence stretched. Ashley finally spoke. You own this place? I met her eyes. I helped build it. Doreen sat back like she needed distance from the answer. Preston cleared his throat. So that's why they keep calling you, what did he say, Miss Delaney? I said nothing. I didn't need to. Because every detail they'd ignored was now undeniable. The custom menu. The staff deference. The curated music. The way Marcus moved like someone who answered to me. Ashley looked down at the bottle between us like it might explode. You've been sitting here this whole time just letting us talk, I offered. She looked up. You made us look stupid. No, I said softly. You did that on your own. That landed harder than I meant it to. But I didn't take it back. Because it was true. They'd been so busy playing a role, they never paused to consider the story had changed. Ashley bristled. You waited for this moment, didn't you? I shook my head. I waited for you to see me. You chose not to. Doreen finally spoke. You could have told us. I turned toward her. And if I had? I asked. She didn't answer. Just stared at the tablecloth like it might offer a script she could live with. A breeze of discomfort swept across the table. No one touched their glasses. The bottle of wine sat unopened. Across the room, Jazz laughed at something behind the bar. Her voice rang clear, light, unburdened. Ashley shifted again. So what, you're some secret mogul now? No, I said. I'm someone who got tired of explaining herself. She went quiet. And I felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph. Not bitterness. Just stillness. The kind that comes when you stop trying to earn a seat at someone else's table and realize you built your own. The kitchen doors swung open. A young server brought out a tray of parting Sweetstony bites, complimentary, just like we designed. She placed one in front of each guest. Then she paused, leaned toward me, and whispered, "Thank you for this job." My mom says I smile again. She didn't wait for a reply. Just walked away. And for the first time all night, I swallowed back tears. Not because I was broken. Because I'd been building something whole. Even when no one clapped. The wine bottle still sat unopened between us, a quiet monument to everything left unsaid. No one reached for it. No one toasted. Ashley finally broke the silence. You waited for this, she said, low and bitter. You wanted us to look stupid. I met her gaze, steady and clear. No, I said. I wanted you to see me. She laughed short, sharp. Same thing. Doreen stiffened. Ashley? No, Ashley snapped, turning to her. Don't Ashley me, you sat there too. All night. Let her play the long game. I wasn't playing anything, I said. I showed up, that's all. She rolled her eyes. At your own restaurant. I didn't invite myself here, I reminded her. You picked this place, you just didn't know who built it. Ashley's face flushed. You could have said something. Before, years ago. I did, I said, voice quiet. You just didn't listen. She froze. And I felt a year's worth of swallowed hurt pressing just behind my ribs. It didn't rise with heat. It wasn't anger anymore, it was clarity. You asked me what I did, I continued, and laughed when I told you. You treated my work like a joke, my goals like a phase. I kept building anyway. Doreen's hands clasped tight in her lap. Preston looked away. Ashley crossed her arms. You're being dramatic. I tilted my head. You told people I worked with garbage. You do. I work with systems, I said. With contracts, with clients, with cities. But sure, let's call it garbage. At least I know what I'm cleaning up. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone, I added. I came because I was invited, for once. Ashley shook her head, but her shoulders slumped. The edge was crumbling. Doreen finally spoke. You've always been private. Closed off. It was hard to know where you stood. I looked at her. Really looked. I stood where you left me, I said. On the edge. Always on the edge. A beat passed. You never asked about the bruises. The missed holidays. The fact that I went from dumpster routes to city contracts. You just smiled and said, "At least you're keeping busy." She didn't argue. She just blinked, slow and unsure. Ashley's voice came smaller now. You made it so hard to support you. No, I said. You made it hard to stay. That landed harder than I thought it would. Not because it was cruel. Because it was honest. For a long moment, no one moved. Then I reached into my clutch, pulled out the check I'd tucked inside earlier. The dinner bill already paid in full. I slid it across the table toward Doreen. She didn't touch it. You paid? Preston asked. I always pay, I said. In ways you'll never understand. That part wasn't for him. It was for me. Because the cost of being unseen wasn't just emotional. It was decades of labor. Silence. Building something while pretending it didn't hurt to be invisible. Ashley stared at the envelope like it was poisoned. You really want to end it like this? She asked. I shook my head. No, I said. But I'm okay if this is how it ends. And I meant it. Because closure isn't always mutual. Sometimes it's just the moment you stop needing their version of you to survive. I stood slowly. Gathered my clutch. Smoothed my dress. Doreen opened her mouth, then closed it. Not to speak. Just to let me go. For the first time in my life, I didn't look back to see if they watched me leave. Because I already knew they would. I didn't cry on the ride home. Not once. Not even when the driver asked if I'd had a good night and I just nodded, staring out the window like the streetlights might offer better company than words. I got dropped 2 blocks from my place. Walked the rest in heels that pinched a little but made me feel tall enough to carry the weight I'd finally laid down. The restaurant lights faded behind me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small in their glow. I let myself in, turned on the kitchen light, and dropped my keys in the same ceramic bowl I'd carried through 3 apartments and 2 cities. It made a dull clink. That sound meant I'd made it. Still breathing. Still mine. I pulled off the dress, folded it over the arm of the couch, wiped the makeup from my face like I was erasing someone else's expectations. Someone I no longer owed anything to. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I boiled water, steeped my favorite tea peppermint with a hint of orange rind and wrapped myself in the quilt I'd kept since college. The one with the fraying corner I'd stitched back 4 different times but never replaced. Some things don't need fixing. They just need care. My phone buzzed once. A text from Jazz. Hey, just wanted to say thanks again. Not just for the tip, for all of it. I hope you got what you needed tonight. I stared at the screen a moment. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because for the first time all night, someone had asked what I needed. I typed slowly. I didn't go to be seen, I went to stop hiding. Thank you for seeing me anyway. I hit send. Then turned my phone face down. Let the quiet settle back over me. Somewhere deep in the house, my laundry buzzer went off. I didn't move. Instead, I looked around. At the walls I'd painted myself. The bookshelf I'd assembled at 2 a.m. while crying through a breakup. The plant in the corner that I'd forgotten to water twice but, still, somehow, was blooming. None of it was perfect. But every inch of it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I realized something simple. I didn't need their version of me to feel real. Because I'd built one that could stand on its own. I thought about that dinner table. All the silence. All the noise. And then, I thought of the back door at Briar and Pine. The one by the compost bins. The one no one used but staff. The one I'd chosen to enter through the night we opened not because I had to, but because I knew where I belonged. That door? It was still there. And so was I. 2 weeks later, I came back to the restaurant. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. The air was colder no late, fall creeping in fast, but the lights inside Briar and Pine glowed steady, warm as ever. Through the front windows, I could see the early dinner rush beginning. Napkins folded tight. Candles flickering low. Everything just as we designed it. I didn't go through the front. I slipped around back, past the alley where the compost bins sat. Still clean, still quiet, still mine. The back door was cracked the way I liked Idapin, just enough to let the scent of rosemary and heat roll into the cold night. I pushed it open and stepped inside. Marcus looked up from the pass, already smirking. Told him you'd show. Jazz peeked from behind the prep line, flower on her cheek. You want the booth or the window? Booth, I said, shrugging off my coat. Marcus nodded toward the corner table. The one with the curved wall and soft light, my favorite. I slid in without ceremony. This place didn't need ceremony. It needed presence. He brought me a ginger soda without asking. Jazz set down a warm roll and a dish of herbed butter. I didn't need a menu. This wasn't a performance. It was home. Marcus sat across from me briefly, just like he used to in the early days between orders, when the investors pulled out and the sink was leaking and we had more grit than grace. Dinner was smooth, he said. Numbers are strong. Jazz might finally take that manager role. I smiled. She's ready. He glanced around. We filled the corner shelf. I turned toward the back wall where we displayed thank you notes, photos, and anonymous staff shoutouts. Near the top was a new card. Folded linen paper. Familiar handwriting. My stomach flipped once. Then settled. I stood, walked to the shelf, and picked it up. It wasn't long. I didn't see you, but I do now. Mom. Just that. No grand apology. No phone call. But I didn't need grand. I needed real. And this? This was the first thing she'd ever written that didn't include instructions or correction. Just recognition. I put the note back where it belonged. Didn't pocket it. Didn't frame it. Just left it there. Because some things don't have to be carried anymore. They can just be seen. I sat back down, tore off a piece of bread, and let the butter melt. Jazz passed by and winked. Want me to bring you the good dessert? You already did, I said. She grinned. And I thought, this is the full circle they never show in stories. Not the big, emotional speech. Not the hug or the breakdown or the viral post. Just a woman sitting in a booth she helped build. Eating bread she paid for. Drinking ginger soda while her people laugh in the kitchen. And somewhere, a door stays cracked. Letting in air. Letting in light. Letting in the version of you that was always waiting to be let inside. I used to think I needed their table. Now I know. I was the table. I was the door. And I've been open this whole time.